everyone, my name is Carol and I'm a freelance lifestyle journalist who also runs almostdiplomatic.com. It's where I share about my life as a millennial diplomat's wife, the good life on a budget, and currently living in and staying put in Berlin. The traveling will have to wait. I wanted to stay a little bit more zen because I wanted to talk about my anxiety today. So I never talked about my mental health before because I always believed that it is something that I should keep to myself. I find that this is one of the things that should be kept private. However, if this could help someone, I thought, why not, right? So it's been widely believed among my friends who are psychologists, psychiatrists, and life coaches that I've had anxiety for years. And it's actually interesting how I've always had a friend who's in that field at almost any stage of my life. So I think that's also the universe's way of helping keep me in check. But it was only at the beginning of this year when I had the courage, like I was able to muster it up and finally go to therapy. So going to therapy has been extremely helpful for me, and the things that I learned from my doctor have been of utmost importance during this time. These past few weeks have been difficult, and I'm pretty sure it's not just for people like me who are diagnosed with this condition, but also for people who are not normally anxious. It is a very difficult, very different time. So during my sessions with my doctor, we were able to identify my triggers. And while I don't have a lot, the thing about this pandemic is that it seems to hit every single thing that is on my short trigger list. That's why it's been a lot more difficult than the usual. So here are some of the ways that I am coping with my condition, especially during this time. I hope this will be helpful to you. First is you have to acknowledge your feelings and know where they're coming from. As someone who's not known for being very emotional, I do admit that I tend to brush feelings aside. So the bad thing about being used to such a response is that when I do have feelings that need to be addressed, I would tend to brush them off as well. So choosing to admit to yourself that something or a situation is actually bringing you discomfort, or if you have feelings that are eating you up, instead of brushing these aside, acknowledging them will actually give you the space to assess what is it that you're feeling and why you are feeling them. And then assessing the why part comes next. So I have been lethargic ever since we started social distancing, and I have been having a hard time writing or creating content. I just wasn't in the mood. So I was thinking that it might just be your usual writer's block, so something that people who work in the creative industry would normally experience, right? But I have just been so lethargic, and at one point getting up in the morning was starting to get really hard. So like an annoying parasite, my anxiety was back and I needed to accept that. Lately, I have been getting a lot of updates from family and friends. There has been a death in our extended family. I'll just talk about it later on in the video. And it has really been getting to me. I have also been consuming a lot of news. So all these things were really starting to scare me and make me much more anxious. I used to believe that if I don't say it out loud, it's not gonna be true. So let's say I'm really scared, but as long as I don't talk about it, then I'm not really scared. I could brush it off. However, I was told that this is wrong because if I don't acknowledge those feelings, I cannot work on them. And they tend to manifest on other things in relation to my mood and how I'm living my day-to-day life. Next is stay informed but put a limit to it. Here in our household, we are hyper aware of what's happening in different parts of the world. So one, because my husband and I have great interest in the news, I did work for a news channel as a TV journalist, and come to think of it, if I'm still working for them, I would also probably be covering the pandemic right now. And two, since my husband works for the embassy, he's handling political and cultural affairs, he has to stay on top of these things. He has to be informed. And of course, we talk to each other about these things. I try my best to limit my daily consumption, and on particularly bad days, I just ask him for updates, like what are the things that I need to know in the morning or during midday. I never ask in the evenings because I really don't want to keep thinking about this at night because it will make my insomnia worse. Next is you have to assess how you yourself can cope with your anxieties. Coping mechanisms are unique to each person. So some people make the situation lighter by being funny on TikTok or binging on their favorite shows on Netflix or even becoming master chefs at home, while there are some people who need a day or two to rest their heads, just lay low. It's not a one size fits all, so it's always best to check what is best for you. Also, at the same time, it is best that you don't judge other people for the way that they are coping with the situation. While the pandemic is primarily a health issue, it has knock-on effects on almost every single aspect of our lives. All of us are affected one way or another. I found that the best way for me to cope in this situation is by maintaining as much sense of normalcy as possible. And so for me, that means being able to do my work, which I love. So I do my work, which is lifestyle journalism and content creation. I still write things related to lifestyle, create videos and other types of content related to lifestyle, and I post about them either on my website or on my social media accounts and also on the pages of the news websites that I work for. Of course, my content lately is not just about lifestyle. I also post some important information about the virus, but I make sure that that's not the only thing that I talk about because I know for a fact that it is bound to affect me negatively later on. I also walk Juancho, and since my husband is also working from home, since the embassies here in Berlin are currently closed, I make food for us. I am no master chef, but somehow cooking is starting to become enjoyable for me, and it's starting to become like a productivity sort of thing, which I like. I also fix myself up, put makeup on, do my hair, because these are things that I enjoy, and also it's part of my work. I film videos and take photographs, so this is also something that is part of what I feel is normal. Next is scheduling. So I think by now you know that I do love productivity as it gives me such a high. So I try to get things done even when my anxiety is really trying its best to work against me. I try to schedule every single part of my day, usually by the hour. I do calendar blocking on my Google Calendar. And I must admit that it's been very helpful, although there are days when something unexpected will pop up and it will ruin my schedule. I have to admit that it annoys me, which brings me to my next piece of advice, which is to accept the things that aren't under your control. But you can also work around it or put your focus somewhere else. I am definitely a work in progress when it comes to this, and it's actually my nails and also my lips that have suffered pretty badly because of this. I tend to bite my nails and my lips when I am feeling anxious. So there are things that bother me, that make me anxious, and I can't talk about every single one, but okay, I'll talk about a couple and tell you how I was still able to make myself feel at ease even though they are technically not under my control. So one is how there is such a need for personal protective equipment for our frontliners. They are heavily exposed and not everybody has all the protective gear that they need. And another is how there are some people who had to stop working because the nature of their job is not something that you can do from home. And because of this, they are not earning enough for their families. So there is such a big demand for help globally. I acknowledge that we are part of the population who are fortunate enough to be able to do our work from the safety of our own homes. And it makes me sad that there's just so many people who are having such a hard time. And I know I'm no Jesus who can just help every single person. However, one thing that has really helped me ease my anxiety is also by actually helping. So my doctor said that supporting causes or actually doing something, helping out where I can help me ease my anxiety as well, because of course this is something that's bothering me. This is why I feel so strongly about a certain cause, and being able to do even just a little thing about it should be helpful in easing that anxiety as well. And at the same time, being able to protect a couple of frontliners or being able to send a meal or two to a family whose breadwinner couldn't go to work are actually just some of the things that we can do right now while we are at home. Encouraging others to do the same also goes a long way. So I know that I cannot help everybody, but if I can get a friend or two to do the same, and those two friends can encourage other people to do that too, then it creates a ripple effect. And knowing that there are others who are also helping out will also ease that anxiety, especially if you are having very similar feelings. For most of us who are at home, this is the most that we can do, aside from not going out, adding to the number of people outside, and unknowingly spreading the disease. Another thing that really gets to me is how the elderly are really at risk when it comes to this virus. My father is 75 years old and he lives in Scandinavia. It's just an hour away from Berlin by flight. However, if something happens, knock on wood, then it would be quite difficult to see each other. Thankfully, his wife is with him and my sister lives nearby. My maternal grandparents, however, are living by themselves in Manila, and that is much farther from where I am. I admit that I've lost sleep for a couple of nights thinking about it, and I've also had a mini breakdown a couple of weekends back. This was when I found out that a member of our extended family in Amsterdam died after displaying symptoms of COVID-19. So I'm related to her through my mom's marriage. I've always found her to be sweet and really smart. I always enjoyed talking to her whenever we visited Amsterdam. And hearing about her death was quite a shock, even though she's already 83, because she's always been very strong for her age and she seemed much younger. Like you would think she's only in her 60s. I guess it's the way that she lived her life. She was quite a woman. So when I found out what happened, I called my dad and I also called my grandparents, and I was just spewing so many reminders, telling them not to go out anymore, etc., telling them how scared I was. And at one point I started crying quite uncontrollably in front of my dad. This is something that I don't do. I am normally the emotionally stable member of the family, at least on the outside. So that was quite a shock for my dad, for myself, and my husband. I was just so scared, and knowing that I can't be there physically or I won't be able to help protect them. I don't know how, it's a virus, but not having any control over how I could help keep them safe was really killing me inside. So this is something that, again, I cannot control. How the elderly members of my family will live their life, and I can't monitor them every single day to make sure that they don't expose themselves, especially my grandparents who are just living by themselves and don't have anybody to ask in the same household to get their groceries for them. So we live in a part of Berlin where there are a lot of retired couples, and I am particularly fond of this couple that lives in the same building as us. So before the stricter rules on social distancing were imposed here in Berlin, I was already feeling so anxious for my family members and also for that couple in our building. So what I did was I sent the couple a letter telling them that if they needed any help in getting groceries or other supplies, I could just do it for them because they are of high risk. Me, not so much because I am younger and I don't have any pre-existing conditions. My husband has bradycardia, so he is somebody that I also have to take care of, but I could easily be isolated. So that's what I was thinking. I got the sweetest thank you message after that, and my neighbor even sent me a photo that my letter was like on display in one of the prominent areas of their home. So I found that really sweet. And yeah, I have a better relationship with my elderly neighbors, even though I miss my grandparents. Somehow it makes me feel at ease that even though I can't do anything for them in Manila, I could do something for the couple here in our building just in case. So I didn't tell my family about the offer that I made to our neighbors. It just wasn't brought up. And the thing is, a couple of days after that, I got a message from my grandmother that she wanted to call me, and so we talked on the phone. And she told me that one of her neighbors actually offered to help her get her groceries. This is one of her younger neighbors, and it just made me so happy. Also, the local government where she lives also brought them some supplies. Maybe it's karma or some other cosmic or religious thing, but somehow it came back to me and it made me feel less anxious. So, if you are part of the population who's younger, who doesn't have pre existing conditions, and if you are going out for groceries anyway, for your own supplies, it won't take much effort to get extra cartons of milk or eggs and some beef or whatever it is that your neighbors need. You can just leave it at their door. They can pay you back by leaving money. It's doable. So, if we help one another out, it becomes a little more positive in your area. And that really makes me feel much more at ease. Next is do something about the things that you can actually control. So my feelings are something that I actually have control over, and no matter how my anxiety tries to make me think otherwise, how my day would turn out is something that I can also control. Who I talk to, what I consume, how I would react to a certain thing. Focusing on these things instead will definitely help you cope. Speaking of control, another thing that you have control over is whether you will exercise today or not. And I suggest that you do, because for me, exercise has done wonders. And right now, I am obsessed with my Peloton bike. I go for a spin class almost every day or a dance cardio instead. That has made things much more convenient, and especially now when all the gyms are closed, it's like I have my own personal trainer here. For dance cardio, it just makes me so happy. I am not a good dancer and I look ridiculous, but I don't know, I'm a firm believer that you should be able to make fun of yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously. Next, I believe that social distancing doesn't mean that you have to go on mute. Call your friends and call your family members, give each other updates, because of course you want to know how they are, but they also want to know how you are doing. However, don't just talk about the virus or all the negative things that are happening out there. Always end on a high note. This is my personal rule. I always make sure to end the conversation by discussing something fun or funny. I would talk about some of the plans that I have, some of the things that I want to work on, or I'll tell them about something funny that another friend said, or maybe something that Juancho did today that was really cute. So yeah, just always end on a really high note. It has helped my mood because I don't want to put the phone down and just keep thinking about something negative or about the virus again. This is something that you could focus on instead. And last but certainly not the least, make sure that you get enough sleep. This, I admit, is also very challenging for me because I suffer from insomnia. I haven't talked about it much before as well, but it comes and goes, and normally it comes with my anxiety, like they're best friends. And when I'm having a particularly anxious period, like my insomnia is also like at its peak, and it has been really difficult for me the past couple of weeks now. But I was advised to really try and get into an ideal sleeping routine. So for tonight, I am planning on doing my workout early so that I get to shower by 10 p.m. and hopefully be in bed no later than 11, maybe with my copy of the new Monocle and just reading until I fall asleep. But if you are experiencing it as well, try to push yourself to get an ideal sleeping routine and try to build up on that. Let's work on that together. I'll update you. So up until this point, we've been discussing some of the tips that can help you and also me when it comes to dealing with anxiety. These tips were discussed with my doctor even before the pandemic, and I just cannot thank him enough because these things have been so helpful these past few weeks. It's still not a walk in the park, I will admit this to you. It's not that I'm not even struggling, obviously I am, but having this knowledge has been of great help. I might be dealing with it worse if I didn't go to therapy. Go and seek help because there's really nothing wrong with asking for it. So the video on dress codes will be filmed really soon. Like I said, I am trying to be as productive as possible, as productive as I can be while battling anxiety during this time. So for now, I am sending you all some virtual hugs, like that emoji. And I hope that you all stay safe, stay healthy. If you are feeling anxious, I hope that you find ways to ease it and you cope better, especially in the next couple of weeks. I hope this ends soon and that we all get through it. Until then, I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.